The major challenges, I think you can probably, there's probably a number of them. I think you have the regulatory challenges. I think in certain areas of Africa, I think it's fair to say that the regulation is more liberalised, and therefore the participation of the private sector has allowed the progress of connectivity and the value-added services to become more profound. And like I say, the other challenge, of course, is finance.
From MTN's point of view, I guess it's availability of spectrum. It's being able to get the right sort of spectrum that we need. It's being able to get the right sort of returns for the investments that are made. Obviously, as you know, when you have major growth, significant growth in data volumes, you're not getting the commensurate returns in terms of the revenues. So I think getting the right model in that regard is going to be important, so that you are getting the correct sort of returns for the investment that is being made. I would probably say that's your single largest challenge that we need to overcome.
In my opinion, there are two major drawbacks or major handicaps that we have. First handicap is the lack of infrastructure. Like when you are spreading the networks in rural areas, then you need the basic. Most of the African countries is still we are lacking in the infrastructure. And second main obstacle that I see is the regulatory. The regulations in most of the countries are evolving in the evolving stages. So the more the regulators understand and realize the importance of the telecommunication in the development of the countries, it will be more liberalizing, and it will become more affordable and it can spread more easily to the every part of the continent.
In recent years, we have had many submarine cables landing on Africa's shores. We now have a lot of bandwidth at the landing points. The challenge is getting that bandwidth to the people who need it, who are in the countries, some landlocked countries, and so on. Today, most of the network service providers, they work within a country in the framework of the license they hold. What we need is to find more resources to build cross-border networks so that the bandwidth can reach those areas that need it and don't have it at the moment. So we are looking for policy and regulatory frameworks that allow that to happen, and thank God we now have the PIDA, the Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa, approved by the African Union Summit, and now we are going into the implementation stage of that program.
The main challenges, I think they are multiple. I mean, maybe the first thing for me is planning. We shouldn't, again, just run and start building. Let's look at maybe things, one even beyond the country level, at least at the regional level, because the technology or expansion of the network should make it easier to, let's say, either move around, in those countries, or increase trades, or or make the regional institution that we put in place much more efficient. So from that perspective, I think planning is important. Let's look at what is it that we're trying to achieve. Then let's see what infrastructure we can put in place to support that. And today I don't think that we're doing it in all cases. Sometimes we just come and say, oh, you know what, fiber is great. We go and relay down fiber. Then we sit down. There have been countries where fiber has come and then people didn't know what to do with it. So I think because the thinking process didn't take place enough time in advance, or even when it takes place enough time in advance, it's biased, because people again think of technology. Whereas what I would suggest and recommend, we try to think of what we're trying to achieve, what solution are we trying to put in place. Then infrastructure will follow. Then we'll have infrastructure that will be much more efficient. That will be maybe hybrid, that will leverage the strength of the various technology, that will combine them. Almost like, I'll give you an example, when you transportation. If you are to move containers, let's say from China to Ethiopia, you're not going to fly them. right? Although we know that by plane it's much faster, but it just doesn't make sense either economically or also you cannot take that many containers. You put them in the vessels, right? You bring them to a port, let's say in Djibouti, and then you load them on trucks. The trucks will stop maybe somewhere in the vicinities of the city, and then you put them in smaller trucks to move them in the city. So I think that's how we need to think when it comes to infrastructure, telecom infrastructure, to look at those different technology, fiber, submarine cables, satellite, microwave. All those I think can play a big role, an efficient role if, again, it comes as part of the thinking process. We want to develop a good healthcare system, a good school system, deploy government network, let's say border controls or custom services, postal services. So how can we make that efficient? And then we build the network accordingly. And how can we make sure that it's easy for people, let's say, to move from Ethiopia to Djibouti to, let's say, when you move there, at least you still have the same connectivity. Again, once we have that in place, I think the infrastructure, the right infrastructure will